Good evening. My name is Patty McConaughey. I'm the Communications Director for Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge, and I want to welcome you tonight to this community forum. As I said, my title at Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge is the Communications Director, but what that really means is that I actually have the best job in the world. I get to go around communities and tell people about the programs that we offer, that the treatment and recovery options that people have, and most importantly, that addiction doesn't have to be the end. And so we really are very pleased to be with you here tonight. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge, and then I'm going to introduce the amazing other organizations that are here partnering with us as we try to reach out into the community of Hudson and make sure that everybody who would like information about addiction and preventing some of the things that can happen because of it are able to get the information that they need. So, Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge has been around for a little over 30 years. We have a program that is offering a full range of services today. We used to be very small. In fact, the day that we opened our doors, we had the ability to serve 6 men. And today, we are serving more than 600 people of all ages, men and women, boys and girls. And so we're really excited about the growth that we've had, but we also know that that growth means that people are in need of services. So that full range that we offer is short-term programming, meaning that traditional 12-step treatment program that most people are familiar with. We offer that with an outpatient model and an inpatient model, so people do live on site with us. And we also offer a long-term program that is approximately 400 of the 600 people who are in our program. They live on site with us for more than a year, learning how to recover from drugs and alcohol, but more importantly, how to live a life that's worth living without getting high or using chemicals of any kind. We also offer transitional services for the people who graduate from our program, helping them transition back into the community, finding safe housing, a supportive community, and the other services that they may need as they move forward. And tonight with us is our prevention program, Know the Truth, that serves more than 150 high schools and middle schools around the state of Minnesota and here in Wisconsin, and then also other programs as well. They serve 50,000 area students. Tonight we also have several organizations who have set up tables in the back, and I want to make sure that you know what resources are available. Turning Point is here. Hudson Alano Society, Hudson Safe, Teen Coordinated Community Response, Hudson Hospital Programs for Change, and Family Means. All of these organizations will have resources available to you in the back, along with Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge representatives that are wearing name tags tonight. I just want one of you guys to hold up one of those name tags. Mike, can you do it for me? There we go. Mike right here. He's got one of those name tags. So if you have any questions tonight, look for somebody who's wearing one of those name tags. I also want to ask you, too, to take a look in your folders that you got as you came in, and there is a colored piece of paper. I don't know that everybody's is yellow, but I think most of them are. And that yellow piece of paper is a survey. This helps us do our job better. And so if you would, throughout the evening, if you see something or find something notable, see if there's a spot for that on that piece of paper. But also as the Q&As come up, we will be sort of reminding you to finish filling that out so we can collect them as we walk out the door. Tonight, our first speaker for the evening is from Hudson Safe. And actually, I think I have 2 ladies from Hudson Safe, Tracy and Kelly. Hudson Safe is an organization of parents and other student advocates who provide safe and chemical-free opportunities for teens in the area. Kelly and Tracy.
Hi there. Thank you guys for coming tonight. I know everybody's busy, so we appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to come and spend part of your evening with us. So my name is Kelly Hoyas, and I am the Drug and Alcohol Prevention Coordinator for the Hudson School District. This is my 2nd year in the position, and thankfully the 2nd year that Know the Truth in Minnesota and Adult Teen Challenge has been in our school district. So we are happy to have them back and happy to have them here tonight. A lot of the time I spend during my work day is with students and then families who are struggling somehow with drug abuse or addiction and recovery as well. And then another part of my work is to be involved in community coalitions. And so one of those organizations that I'm involved with is Hudson Safe, which stands for Student Alcohol-Free Events. So Tracy is going to talk a little bit about the parent pledge cards that you guys got when you came in tonight. But Hudson Safe really is a nonprofit in town that was based here. It started as part of our senior all-night party, which is a lock-in to help prevent substance use after prom and graduation. That's the senior all-night party. But just encouraging different events that are substance-free for kids to take part in Hudson as a community. And so I'm the secretary on that committee, and she's going to talk a little bit specifically about the parent pledge. And then at the end of the presentation, Tracy and I will be out in the front, so if you have questions specifically about resources for the school district, I'm happy to answer those. And then between Tracy, myself, and then Mark Richard, who's here somewhere in the back, we are happy to address any questions you might have about Hudson Safe as well. So again, thank you guys for coming. We really appreciate you taking the time.
I'm Tracy Chase, and I'm the parent rep for Hudson Safe, and I'm going to talk about the parent pledge. We designed this pledge after seeing the success of keeping the senior all-night party alcohol-free event, and we wanted to extend that philosophy to the students' homes. So we came up with this 5-point pledge for parents to discuss with their child, and it basically says, Promise 1, I promise to host alcohol-free activities and events in my home. Promise 2, I encourage other parents to call me when their teen will be in my house and to be at home when my teen has a party. Promise 3, if they do make a mistake and they need some help to be able to pick up your child and they're in danger and need a ride home, no questions asked until the morning. Promise 4, I promise to talk to my teen about where they're going, what they are doing, whom they are with, and when they'll be home. My son loves that because I don't text him as much when I get all that information. And promise 5, I promise to talk to my teen about the dangers of using controlled substances and prescription drugs. And this is a great tool just to start the conversation with your teen. If it's a pledge that you agree, you can fill out the front and back form on the side, and there's a basket. When you exit the auditorium, you can just put it in there. Or you can go to hudsonsafe.org and click on Parent Pledge. The same information is on there. You can see other parents that have pledged as well. And like Kelly said, we'll be out in the lobby if you have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you both. Tonight with us from the Hudson Police Department is Chief Marty Jensen. He has spent a lifetime. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Excuse me. I skipped some stuff. Our district attorney from the area is Mr. Eric Johnson, and he's here to speak with us this evening. He is the district attorney of St. Croix County since 1989 and is the frequent lecturer at the National Advocacy Center and teaches advocacy at William Mitchell.
Thank you. Is music go on at 6 minutes? Is it like the Oscars? I've been a district attorney. I've been elected district attorney since 1984, and a DA or a prosecutor since 1982. So that's about 33 years in this area, and I've been able to see there's some advantages of age and experience, and one is you get to see a lot of trends and things that happen, and develop policies that some work, some don't work through our office. And here's some of the things I've learned on when it comes to drugs and alcohol is you separate what we've learned, and what we try to do is we separate the dealers or the major dealers or the bad guys, the people that are actively involved in this, and we go after them through law enforcement, through investigation, search warrants, strong prosecution, prison time. A few years ago, there was somebody selling significant amounts of marijuana and other drugs at the middle school, so we set up, or I did a John Doe hearing. We brought students in and had them testify, and some of them we gave immunity to, and we ended up finding who the dealer was and where he was getting his stuff from, and it was from his brother, and we did a search warrant there and found a lot of things. So those are what we do. Those are the things that work with the people that are actively involved in this, and that we characterize as the bad people. And I found that no matter what we do, education, all these things are great. You still have to make sure that people that deal and that are involved in this and selling it to people know that it's illegal, and that there's going to be consequences, and you need to cut down on the supply. So even though it's not the only solution, I think it's a part of the solution that what we have here is that we need to be aggressive in some of our law enforcement issues when it comes to drugs and alcohol. Another thing is that doing this all these years, one thing that's been consistent is alcohol. Alcohol has been a problem for longer than, well, as long as I've been a prosecutor, and it's one that doesn't get the publicity or the attention, but it's a significant problem here in our high school and in the community. The other thing that I think a prosecutor's office has, and that we've done fairly effectively, we've been involved in legislation. A number of years ago, we had a meth problem, and there was a variety of things we did, but we were able to rewrite some legislation through our office, contacting Representative Rhodes at the time and Sheila Harsdorf, making pseudoephedrine illegal. So I think prosecutors can have that role. But the other thing that I think is that you're seeing, and I'm in agreement with the trend, is the other people that are involved in drugs, but are not the ones that deserve prison or that type of thing, and that's probably about 80% of our population. And there's a variety of things that we do in those cases, and I'm talking about through the court system. One is drug court. I think an effective drug court can have make a real difference in a lot of these people, and these are high-risk offenders. We put them through drug court that goes about 18 months. But there's also a variety of other things. It's called evidence-based prosecution and through the system. And what you look at is you look at the needs of the offender and try to fit your punishment or your court orders into that. So, for example, if you have an 18-year-old that gets caught with possession of methamphetamine or possession of heroin, which are felonies, do you convict them of a felony and put them in jail and maybe long probation? Another alternative would be is you hold that over their head, give them treatment, put them in some treatment programs, do some kind of a diversion on this. And so that's kind of how we deal with the drug problem here. And like I said, I think the key is identifying who are the major offenders, and those are the dealers. And in heroin especially, you can't say I've heard some prosecutors say we send all dealers to prison. Well, the problem is a lot of the dealers are the users, and they're dealing so they can get money to buy drugs, and they're selling small amounts and using small amounts. And so there's a lot of, you can't make those blanket statements. But like I said, it's a problem that we've had. The big difference, though, and like I said, we've seen a big meth problem that's come through here. We've seen alcohol over the years. But the problem we have is on heroin is that it's fatal. And I think it's not only a St. Croix County problem, but it's a statewide problem. It's a nationwide problem. And the mistakes and the consequences are lethal and are fatal. And that's the difference. And I think so the consequences are a lot higher. And I believe that law enforcement, along with all the other groups and the educational groups and whatever, have a role in this. I've got a few more seconds here. I'm just going to plug our Stop Drugs program. How many people have been winners in our Stop Drugs program? Anybody raise? Usually you go places. We've been doing that for 25 years. We've raised over almost $500,000 over that time, and it's a calendar poster contest for kids, and we give out savings bonds and cash, and we've had speakers come from magicians to comedians to banjo players, and it's a small thing, but I think it's one of the things that a community can do to send out this message. Okay.
Thank you so much, Mr. Johnson, and for your graciousness with my little bit of an overrun there. Now, I did let the cat out of the bag that Chief Jensen is here, but what you may not know about Chief Jensen is that he is also a husband and the father of 3 children, but he's a bass fisherman too and a pheasant hunter, and so I'm going to invite him to come on up here and share with you this evening. Chief Jensen.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's great to see people like you out here in the audience trying to learn more about this problem that we're facing in our schools and in our community. This is the 4th forum of this type that we've had in the last 4 years. It started with a heroin forum about 4 years ago, and it continues on. And the best thing about it is I continue to see the same faces out in the audience. Now, that doesn't mean they're the only people coming here, but they're interested in seeing how the problem progresses from year to year, and if there's been any improvement or if there's been anything going on that's making us go backwards. So it's great to have you people here because, as my colleagues have said, we're not going to arrest our way out of this problem. It's a community problem, and everybody is going to have to come forward and help to make this problem go away or make it better. I have the honor this evening to introduce our first speaker, who's going to tell her story from a parent's perspective. In 2013, she lost her daughter to an overdose in the city of Hudson here. And it was a very tragic incident, but she has taken this tragedy and she's taken this pain and she's become an advocate for educating people and getting young people off of drugs. She has turned her life into making sure that people do not suffer the same pain and anguish that she has. So if you'd please help me introduce, or help me applaud Karen Hale.
Hello, I'm Karen Hale, and I'm here to share with you the truth about what drugs can do to you. And that is the loss of a life. I lost my beautiful daughter, Alyssa Ivy, just 10 days after her 21st birthday on May 18th of 2013. Alyssa walked the halls of this school, and somewhere in this building stands a locker she once used. Her art hung on the walls, and she walked across the gymnasium right here in this building on the rainy day in 2010 when she graduated, when it had to be pulled indoors. And she was a graduate of Hudson High of 2010. Doesn't it seem like it's been 2 years? Almost. As I try to rebuild my own life, you know, I walked with a fog of numbness and disbelief as that slowly lifts. But the reality is my daughter is never coming home. And she will never be back. But the truth is, my daughter had a disease. My daughter was a heroin addict. The truth is, she masked whatever pain she carried with her with drugs. It gave her a pinnacle feeling, a euphoric high. And as her journey began and was compounded by when she got her wisdom teeth removed, and Oxy became her friend. Words cannot describe my pain, but it's nothing compared to the pain that Alyssa was going through. No one wants to be a drug addict. No parent wishes that upon their child. I watched helplessly and hopelessly as the destruction grasped firmly onto her life. My entire family's life, my son, my stepson, my own mom, her uncles, her aunts, all her friends. You sit in shame, not knowing who to turn to or to get help. And your child becomes so unrecognizable. The destruction of what drugs has done causes a havoc not only in our family, but to your friends, other loved ones, their friends, and the community too. There's a fine line between some that think it's okay to recreationally use drugs, but there's also a fine line between abuse and addiction. This is a disease that wants to kill you, and especially with heroin. And I can contest, by losing my daughter, that it has, and it will. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So many families in our county and here in Hudson have experienced this epidemic, and I am just one family in this community that has lost. Some are still struggling to find their way, and those who are fortunate are embracing sobriety and are now living a new life. But it is a struggle every day. Drugs use has compounded and is an epidemic proportion, not only in St. Croix County, but across our state and across our nation. Today is about education, to know the truth. Abusing prescription drugs is the gateway to heroin. We have a progressive issue right here at home. And if you would have ever told me, of me as a parent sitting in the audience, that my child would have been impacted by this, I would have been the first to call you a liar. But you see, it doesn't discriminate. If you can think of addiction as a spider web, it engulfs your victims. It will not let go. It devastates our sons and daughters from the best of families. It shows no bias. It is an equal opportunity destructive vessel. But so many will say, oh, this won't happen to me. This won't happen in my home. Not my child, not me, not us. I did the same thing. But the truth is, it can happen to you. I know, because Alyssa walked this journey. An estimated 80% of heroin users started becoming addicted through prescription drugs. It can be you that becomes addicted. I know Alyssa would be honored for me to tell others her story, to help others not to walk in her footsteps. Because I know if she could be blasting through those front doors as ornery as she was, and she'd be running through this auditorium, probably sitting in one of the seats that many of you are sitting at today, because she is a graduate of Hudson High. She would say, don't make my choice. Don't even think about this. Don't think it is fun to do. Don't try and be cool. If someone tries to say, hey, let's just get high for one day, look at me, she would say. Look at what I've done. I did not want this for myself, I know she would say, because I caught her in the bathroom one time, crying and almost screaming at herself, I don't want to be an addict. And the voice back was saying, but you are an addict. And she was fighting the demon to break free of the chains of addiction. I know she would also say, please, look at me. Do not walk in my footsteps. I was at the pinnacle of my life. I had so much more to explore. But look at the pain that I've put my mom through. So please, talk to your kids. Kids, talk to your friends. It's not cool to do drugs. We need to talk about this, and we need to keep the dialogue going. We can't stay in shame. We can't stay in silence. My voice is just one, and it's a whisper, but with so many together, it becomes a roar. Please, talk to your kids, because I sure wish I could talk to Alyssa one more time. Thank you.
Get my glasses out so I can read. It's heckety gold when you got to take out your glasses to read. I've been asked to do drug trends that we've seen through the city of Hudson here. I wish my Detective Sergeant Jeff Willems was here. He's been doing this presentation for the last 4 years. However, he's laid up from a golf injury. So you get me this evening. Over the last couple of years, we've seen a decline in the amount of heroin cases that we've taken. In fact, last year we didn't have one case. However, we are seeing a lot more meth and marijuana. We opened 36 cases last year. Now that might not seem a lot, but that's not just simple possession. Those are 36 drug investigation cases that our detectives took out. 80% of those were for meth or for marijuana. And we're seeing quite a few of that drugs coming from over in the Twin Cities. Along with the marijuana that we're seeing coming over in large quantities from Colorado and California. In fact, we've had several cases within the last 6 months where we've caught suppliers coming in with over several pounds. Eric, I would say somewhere in the 10 to 20 pound range coming over to sell it in our area. We've been catching dealers as they've been coming across. So we're seeing quite a bit of that. Now, as it relates to our students here at the school, majority of what we're seeing at the school level, especially at the high school, is marijuana, and as our DA has said before, is alcohol. We are seeing kids coming to school either intoxicated or they're bringing alcohol to school. Now, it's not a large amount, but we are still seeing that coming through. In the last 4 years, I can think about 5 or 6 times where we've caught kids in the school with alcohol that they brought themselves. So it's a problem we're still seeing. The other major drug that we're seeing the kids use a lot of, and that we're seeing a lot more cases of that we're having, and I know our coroner is here and she'll verify this, is prescription drugs. We're seeing a lot of people abusing prescription drugs. We're seeing our kids using prescription drugs, especially in schools. They're taking their other brothers or sisters' drugs and they're selling them to other kids. We find that quite a bit in the high school, and we're finding it in the middle school as well. What we're trying to do to combat that is we've got our school resource officer obviously working here at the high school, but we've also got one at the middle school now. He's interacting with the kids. And one of the programs that we hope to get up and running next fall is Counteract, which is counteracting bad behavior, such as taking drugs or alcohol. And we're hopeful that will help turn some of this drugs that we're seeing at the schools around. As I've said, those are the type of cases that we're seeing a lot of in the city. And now as I say that, in 2015, we're already running into some situations with overdoses. We've already had one overdose in January where a gentleman died from a methadone overdose. That's a drug that they use to get off of heroin. We just recently had a woman that died from fentanyl overdose. So we're seeing a lot more of the prescription drugs being abused. It's a problem we're trying to work on, obviously, but with prescription drugs, it's very difficult because they can get it through their doctors and they just continue to use and abuse it. As I said, we didn't have any heroin cases last year, but in the last 7 days, we've arrested 2 people with heroin. One who was involved in a shoplifting had some on him, and another gentleman that we believe ran into a building. Well, we know he ran into a building. We suspect that he was possibly intoxicated, but we believe he might have been on heroin when he hit the building. So we're still seeing quite a bit of that, especially over in the Twin Cities. I know our colleagues in Milwaukee are seeing quite a bit of heroin over there. I was kind of hopeful that we were going to miss some of that, but obviously it's starting to make a trend back. 2015 hasn't started out really well for us, obviously with the 2 overdoses and the heroin. We just got, and one more thing I forgot. We did just arrest a subject that had 9.5 grams of meth on him just last night. So the drugs are still coming in. They continue to keep coming in. We're doing our best to try to contain them as best we can. Those are the trends we're seeing now. I wish St. Croix County would have been here. We had somebody from the Drug Task Force. They might have been able to tell you a little bit more about what we're seeing out in the county. But those are the things we're seeing right now. Hopefully in the next year or so we'll be able to show those numbers being a lot less, but we'll just have to wait and see. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Tonight with us from our Know the Truth prevention program, we have several speakers who are going to share their personal stories with you. And for them, this is something that they do every day, but I am constantly blown away by the bravery that it takes for them to stand up in front of groups all over the state of Minnesota and here in Wisconsin. With us tonight is Taylor, and I had the privilege of meeting Taylor probably almost 2 years ago when she was in the program at Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge, and now she works full-time for Know the Truth, and she has been in, we were trying to calculate it earlier tonight, at least 100 high schools and middle schools sharing her story. So Taylor, come on over and share with us.
Good evening. My name is Taylor. I'm 24 years old, and I'm just going to share my story with you guys. I grew up in the Plymouth Maple Grove area of Minnesota. Had a really good childhood, good family, supportive parents. But when I was 7 years old, my parents got divorced, and then my mom remarried a year later. And when that happened, I began to take on some rejection and abandonment issues. My mom was spending a lot of time with my new stepdad and less time with me and my sister. And so going into junior high, I struggled with insecurity. I was really consumed by what people thought of me. Going into high school, I was the same way. I was a varsity football, basketball, and comp squad cheerleader. I was an A honor roll student. Things looked really good on the outside. Nobody knew that I struggled with insecurity or about the battle that went on in my head on a day-to-day basis. I had friends, I just never quite felt like I fit in. And anyway, when I was 15, I was hanging out with a couple guy friends of mine. I was a sophomore and they were seniors. And they pulled out a bottle and asked if I wanted to drink, and was struggling with insecurity. Of course, I said yes. I was worried about what they'd think of me if I didn't drink with them. And so when that happened, that opened up the door for me. Every time that alcohol was available after that in high school, I said yes, because I liked the feeling that it gave me. It numbed me out, and I no longer was worried about what they were thinking. Because I started going to parties and things in high school, especially being around upperclassmen, people started talking. I experienced like rumors and things of the sort, and it hurt, and I kind of found myself resorting to drinking more because of it. Still graduated high school with honors, went on to college. Things still seemed pretty good, but was out of high school about a year when I got my first DWI. And about 6 months later, I was in a fatal car accident where someone actually died. Thankfully, I hadn't been drinking that night, because I very well could have been, but I completely lost it after my accident. I started drinking and smoking every day. I started trying drugs that I said I would never do, like cocaine, ecstasy, prescription pills. I was doing anything I could to numb out and try to forget about my life. And because I turned to drugs and alcohol, I ended up creating more problems. I got a second DWI and other criminal charges, and went to jail for a year. But while I was there, I didn't really learn my lesson. So I got out of jail, went right back to the same friends, the same boyfriend, and I wasn't even out of jail a year before I violated my probation with a third DWI. I was looking at a significant amount of time in prison, but I had a judge who allowed me to go to Teen Challenge, where I started working on a lot of my issues, the underlying reasons why I was drinking, the bullying stuff, the insecurity, depression. About 7 months into Teen Challenge, though, another judge decided I needed to do some time. I had been facing time in 2 counties. One county was letting me be in Teen Challenge. The other county wanted me to execute my sentence. And so I went to prison, the women's facility in Shakopee, for 9 months. And when I got out, went right back to Teen Challenge and graduated Teen Challenge in July. And things have been better than ever since. I've been sober for over 2 years. Family has been restored. I'm working for Know the Truth. It's been awesome. But I'm still living with consequences to this day. Can't drive again until 2020. I'm on probation until 2022. And anytime I go to apply for a job or want to rent an apartment, I have to face my criminal record. But the hardest thing for me on the day-to-day is just how I treated my family, how I treated the important people in my life, the lives that I put in danger each time I got behind the wheel driving. And one thing I can say about like my mom in all of this was she was there for me, and she supported me, but she just didn't know how to help me. And I believe that by having more conversations with me more frequently would have definitely been beneficial. Those times that I dealt with the rumors and the bullying in school, I pretended like I was fine, but I feel like if she had tried a little bit harder, because I think she knew, I think that maybe there could have been something else there. And so still trying to have that conversation even if they try to shut you out. And so thank you guys so much for being here, and that is my story. Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor. Tonight with us also is the director of the Know the Truth program, Adam Peterson. The Know the Truth program has been around since 2006, and he's going to tell you an awful lot more about that. But for me, this is probably one of the most personal things that I am proud of at Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge. I taught high school for 6 years, and during that time, I attended more funerals than I care to speak about of my own students. And their drug and alcohol use is what caused that to happen. And if we had had programs like Know the Truth during that time, I might actually still be teaching. Although I love what I'm doing today, I am so glad that this program is in the high schools and middle schools doing the work that they're doing. Ladies and gentlemen, Adam Peterson.
Good evening. All right. So my name is Adam Peterson. I've been on staff with Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge for 5 years and been working with the Know the Truth program. And so we heard about Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge. We've heard about Know the Truth. Know the Truth started working with Hudson last this was our second school year working with them, and it's just been incredible. Last year we did this forum, and we were in the middle school and high school the entire week, and the stories that we heard from the students, the connections we made, the opportunity to reach out to them and just be a resource to them has been incredible. Our team has been there throughout the year this year, and it's just been amazing. We've had incredible stories from our presenters, and the survey comments and the results we've seen and the response from the students has been incredible. And so it's been a great partnership, and we are just so appreciative of this community and the work that they are doing to try to combat this issue. And so as a prevention program, we're so excited to be a part of that. And so with that being said, we in the schools, we work to prevent addiction. So Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge is a treatment and recovery program. We would love to shut those doors at some point in time, right? But we know that because of our society, because of the things the district attorney and the chief of police stated, we know that it's an uphill battle. And so as many resources and as many people helping as possible, I think we can make a dent. And so tonight, we're talking about prescription pills. We know that heroin is a big thing, but like Karen said, you don't just jump to heroin. There's a pathway. And so really in the schools, we focus on gateway drugs, cigarettes, alcohol, marijuana, prescription pills, and how they lead to other things. And so really encouraging students to think outside of what they hear from their friends, like, oh, weed's not addictive, or it's not that bad, or it's from a doctor. Adderall, how many are familiar with Adderall? Almost everybody, great. What you might not know about Adderall is it's actually a Schedule II drug. The chemical makeup of it is an amphetamine salt. It's in that amphetamine family. It's been known as a prescription dose of methamphetamine. Oxycontin, Percocet, Valium, these painkillers, opiates, Oxycontin is known as a synthetic heroin. The big thing with prescription pills, and not to discount the medical field, when taken under the care of a doctor and under the prescribed amount, they do amazing things, help a lot of people. But when abused, they can be extremely dangerous, with 1 in 4 ER admissions being because of an overdose on prescription medication. Of overdose ER admissions, 1 in 4. And the biggest thing is we know over 70% of prescription medications come from family or friends. There's going to be a slide that will be up later showing the top reasons why teens abuse prescription pills. And the number one reason is because it's there. It's just there. It's available. Not like I have to go looking for it. It's just around. And so it's preventable. But we need to be aware of those things. And so really focusing on those gateway drugs, I think, will help us in this issue. So talking about some of the numbers here that we see. So when we come into the health classes and speak to the students, we survey the students. And last year we stood up here and went over some of the results. And so very happy to share that a lot of the results are actually lower this year with a larger sampling of students. So just to go over this really quick, of the students surveyed, and we work with the health classes, and so we speak to about 30 students at a time, and we have an opportunity for questions. It's really interactive. 24% reported using illegal drugs. And of users, I want to be very clear on that, of users, 94% abuse marijuana. So again, to echo, marijuana is one of the biggest issues. 22% prescription pills. Last year, that number was 39% of the students surveyed users had abused prescription pills. 12% ecstasy and hallucinogenic drugs, and 4% the synthetics. Last year, that number for synthetics was 28% of users had abused synthetic drugs. 46% of students reported they have drank alcohol. 11% of them reported drinking 3 times a month. And so the reason why we put that up there is that kind of shows a repeated use. Someone drinking on a regular basis every weekend, whether it's for the party scene or whatnot. And so some of the good, and this is why I'm excited, we would love to pack this place out, but really what Karen said, we spoke before, and I believe she said it tonight, if she can help one person not go through what she went through, it seems kind of cliche to say it makes it worth it, but it's not in vain. And we know that, and we thank you so much for your bravery. This is why I'm excited that you guys are here. Top 2 reasons why Hudson High School students don't want to use illegal drugs or not use drugs or alcohol. 1, they don't want to see this guy, right? I don't know why not. This is the most attractive guy in the room. But number 2 is they care what you think. No matter how many times they scream at you, yell at you, tell you to mind your own business, whatever it might be, they care what you think. Your opinion matters. And so we're going to get to kind of the what to do, the how to help combat this issue. And that's so important to be here and be educating yourself so you know what to look for. And know that it may seem like your efforts are falling on deaf ears, but they do care. And you can have an impact. And so a little bit, real quick, before we go into our next story. So like I said, 70% of prescription pill abuse are from family and friends. Here are the top reasons why teens use prescription drugs. Again, that number 1, easy to get from parents' medicine cabinets, available everywhere. The idea that they're not illegal drugs, which again, if they don't have a prescription for it, if an individual has a pill of Adderall and they don't have a prescription for it, that's a felony drug charge. And so absolutely can lead to legal consequences. So we're going to kind of jump through some of this stuff. The police chief kind of talked a little bit about, or talked about the trends that you guys are seeing. One thing, as he mentioned, with the marijuana coming from Colorado and things like that, this is, not to get on this subject too much, but this is some of the stuff that's happening in Colorado. And so these images up here look like what? Who would be the target audience if I'm marketing? Children, right? Yeah, this is pot tarts. Right up here on top of the strawberry is a little pot leaf. Ring pots, soda suckers. And so, again, there is so much to all of these different things that a lot of times we don't necessarily think about, and students don't think about how one thing can lead to the next. But I want to introduce another individual who's going to come forward and share their story with you. Mike went through the program at Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge, graduated, and has been working with the Know the Truth program, and shares his story. He's actually from, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but the great state of Wisconsin. I'm a Minnesota boy, but I'll say that for his sake. Big Packers fan here, and so please welcome Mike as he comes forward to share his story.
Thank you, Adam. Good evening. I'll just jump right into my story. Like Adam said, I'm 31 years old as of a few days ago, so I'm still kind of adjusting to saying 31. It seems like it's getting high. I'm originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. My story, I think, is pretty stereotypical for a possible drug addict to be. Everything that Chief Jensen was talking about these heroin and the trends involved with heroin, it's my story. I was born into a family of addiction. My father was an alcoholic, addicted to crack, so growing up was obviously difficult. Didn't really have a male role model in my life. Didn't have anybody that I looked up to, nobody to lead me, guide me. And I'm the oldest of 4 boys, so not only did I not have that, my brothers didn't have that, so I kind of grew up with a overprotective, angry nature. And I realized in school that I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. I had no identity. I didn't know who I was. I did not like myself. And I think that kind of mixed with the lack of a father figure in my life was a horrible combination for me. So my parents ended up getting divorced because of my father's addiction. And I started to make some pretty poor choices. I started hanging out with a cousin of mine that was a few years older than me, and he was involved with the wrong kinds of people, the wrong crowd, doing the wrong kinds of things. And I joined in. I wanted that acceptance. I wanted to feel like I fit in. I wanted to feel like I had male role models in my life, so I based it on all the wrong kinds of people. And I started smoking weed, and I started drinking with these guys. And I didn't think there was anything wrong with it at the time because everybody around me did it. Everybody around me sold it. It was just part of that lifestyle. So for the next several years, I was drinking, smoking weed, not really thinking there was much wrong with it, not thinking I was an addict at all. And the day I moved out of my mother's house, I got an apartment with a gentleman that had surgery on his ACL and was prescribed 30 milligram Percocets, and he gave me 2 of them, and I got high. And that opiate changed my life. I went on a then 7-year battle with opiates. I started building a tolerance up to these pills. Pretty soon it was oxys. After oxys, I tried doing the methadone clinic thing in Milwaukee. I was at a methadone clinic for 18 months. I've tried doing the Suboxone thing. I could not break it. And eventually it led to IV heroin use. My heroin addiction has caused me to do some pretty insane things. My life completely fell apart. I started stealing from my family, stealing from stores, houses, innocent people, manipulating people, pulling schemes on people. My life literally consisted of waking up sick. Towards the end of my addiction, I was homeless. And I'm not talking about sleeping on a couch at my friend's house. I was on the streets, homeless. And I would wake up sick on the streets, try to figure out who I was going to rob, what store I was going to go into, what I was going to steal, where I'd pawn it, just to get some money to not be sick that day, and then have to do it all again tomorrow. That was my life. And towards the end, things started really getting out of control when I started overdosing. I lost a friend to his heroin addiction. I've personally overdosed 4 times. 2 out of the 4 times I needed Narcan to be revived. 1 time was in front of my mother. So needless to say, my addiction wanted me dead, and it should have killed me. But luckily on September 5th, 2013, that was the day I decided that enough was enough. I called my mom. I started crying. I told her what had become of my life. And she told me something I'll never forget on the phone. She said that if I did not change, I would cause her to die with a broken heart. And I'm a mama's boy. That was the hardest thing I've ever heard in my life. That made me think, what have I put this poor woman through? But it was very motivating for me to change. So that was the last day I used. I checked myself into that year-long program. I worked on a lot of the issues that I struggled with my whole life growing up, the divorce, all the insecurities, and I came out a new person. And I'm 18 months sober, and I got a lot of great things going for me. I'm getting married in October. I get to work for Know the Truth. But like Taylor said, you know, I still suffer consequences. My health is absolutely horrible for someone that's my age and what I've put my body through. You know, I now live in Minneapolis, 5.5 hours away from Milwaukee, so I barely see my mom and my brothers because I came up here for treatment. I have to live with everything that I've done to people, innocent people, family members. I'll never undo that stuff. I'll never unsee the things that I've seen. And that's tough. It's really tough. So I don't know if I could just kind of say anything about like the whole parent piece for me. Like I said, I never really had a dad, so it was tough without him. My mom did the best she could, but she also was a pushover. Since I was her oldest, and since she went through it with my father, like she kind of had this denial piece going on all the time, and I could pull anything I wanted on her. For years, I blamed the way I looked, the weight loss, my activity, all that stuff on a gambling addiction. I told her I was up all the time gambling, and that's why I was unhealthy and this and that. And I think she could have done a lot more to sit down with me, you know, friend to friend, and just talk. And I think she would have found out some answers if she would have paid more time, more close attention to that. So I appreciate you guys listening to me, and that's my story.
Thanks, Mike. So we want to get to the positive. What can we do? We know this is an issue. You wouldn't be here if you didn't think it was, if it hadn't impacted your life in some way, shape, or form. And so what are some of the reasons why? You can't have a conversation about addiction without talking about mental health. A lot of times they say, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? A lot of times with mental health and addiction, what comes first? Is it experimenting with an addiction leads to depression or mental health issues? Or someone dealing with mental health issues go undiagnosed because of the stigma associated with mental health, that they start self-medicating with drugs and alcohol. There's a lot of different reasons, and we know guys and gals are different. We have different pressures, different reasons for using. So we just kind of got a couple different categories. I just want to kind of touch on a couple of them. With guys, you know, a lot of times they just want to experiment, or boredom. There is definitely a predisposition, and so there's that whole, I'm sure you've heard that addictive personality, right? If a kid is sat in front of video games for 8 hours, 10 hours at a time, not saying he's prone to be an addict, but that is patterns of behavior to kind of look out for. Instant gratification, lack of confidence is a big one. There's a lot of expectations on men to suck it up, be a man. Real men don't cry. And that's just not true. They go through a lot of the same emotions that women go through, and the bullying and the different pressures that they face, the need to fit in, acceptance. And so drugs can be a mask for that. Concentration, self-treating, the media. Prescription pills have really changed the face of the addict. There isn't a typical, this person is going to be an addict, this person isn't. We know it doesn't discriminate. But what prescription drugs have done is it's kind of gone after a different class of individuals, in the sense of a lot of the individuals that are getting addicted to prescription medication are doing well in school and active in community events and sports. It's not the person that's necessarily failing out of high school or skipping school to go smoke weed. It could be that A honor roll, and they've got 100 things going on in their life, and they need to stay up late to study, and someone says, you know what, Adderall, it's known as the study drug. It'll keep you awake. Or that athlete breaks their ankle, hurts their knee, and they need to get back on the field faster, and so they take prescription opiates to play through the pain. It doesn't discriminate. So some things to look for. Family history of addiction, abuse, neglect, traumatic childhood experience, you can't have a conversation without talking about trauma. It's kind of a hot button word in the addiction field right now, but we know that a lot of use is to cover something up. And a lot of traditional trauma or those types of things you think are, oh, they were abused as a child or sexually molested or went through rape or went through something really traumatic like that. And that's absolutely the case for a lot of people. But for some people, a traumatic experience could be a divorce, could be losing a friend or a family member, having someone die and not opening up and not talking about it and looking for other ways. And so it's important to be mindful of these things that happen in your child's life. Some warning signs. Increased borrowing of money. We had a 17-year-old that shared their story with us a couple years ago, and he said, if my mom would have asked for a receipt, the jig would have been up, right? Because last time I checked, and I'll check with the chief here, but drug dealers don't give receipts, right? Probably not. Try to get a paper trail. You know, if they're asking for $25 every Friday night to go bowling, and then you guys go on a family outing, and their bowling score does not show that they've been practicing, right? Chances are that money's going elsewhere. And so that's a good step you can take. They also have debit cards where you can track where they're spending those expenses. Changes in schoolwork, missing school, declining grades, increased secrecy, possessions or activities. A lot of times you'll see for a regular user or someone that's experimenting, they might leave it in their room, but when they start to get caught up in the addiction a little bit more, they get really paranoid. And so they'll keep their backpack with them at all times. If they're carrying their backpack around the house with them, I would maybe ask to see what's in it, right? Because they don't want to leave it somewhere because they're assuming someone's going to look in it because there's something in there that shouldn't be. Use of incense, room deodorant. If your 13-year-old boy comes home smelling like he was just in an Axe photo shoot or commercial, I'd ask to see the check, right? Chances are it's covering something up. Axe deodorant, those spray things are an alcoholic's best friend. There's alcohol in it. It smells so similar. Changes in conversation, talking in code, missing prescription drugs, bottles of eye drops to mask bloodshot eyes. So some paraphernalia stuff. And maybe during the Q&A time we're going to enter into here in just a couple minutes, maybe some of those questions will come up and the chief and the district attorney can speak more to kind of what they see. But tinfoil or spoons are common with heroin. Any type of paraphernalia, little, a lot of times straws or little baggies, or heroin is stored in little balloons. With some of the synthetic drugs and some of the research chemicals, they're put on things like candy. Like there's one right now that is mimics LSD that has caused some issues in Minnesota in a couple of our cities, and it just is like blotter paper, and they can put it on different things like liquids that can be put on things, and so those are some things to kind of look for. So what can you do? And I'm going to just go through a couple of these things and then invite Patty to come up and kind of start the Q&A time. All the speakers are going to end up here in just a moment to answer your questions, but check one off the box, right? Educate yourself. You're here tonight. Whatever brought you here, hopefully tonight you gained something that you didn't have before, or learned something that you didn't have before, or a resource for whatever's going on in your life that brought you here tonight. Educating them and yourself, it is so important. Like the chief said, we can't arrest ourselves out of this problem, can't prosecute ourselves out of this problem, and it's not just their problem, right? The drug addiction, the criminal activity is not the police's problem. It's not the district attorney's problem. It's the communities. We need to do this together. And so one big thing with prescription medication, let's make it not so easily available, right? Let's lock it up, move it out of the bathroom where they can shut the door and have their way with it. You'd be amazed. I'd encourage you tonight to go home, look in your medicine cabinet and see what's there. The United States, we have less than 5% of the world's population. We consume over 75% of the world's medication. That sink in? Less than 5% of the world's population and people, and we consume over 75%. We are overly medicated. Our society is. This stuff is really available. The one thing you might not know is medication has an expiration date, right? We know that with milk. You go to the fridge, it's been in there a couple days, you do the sniff test, right? Maybe you try it a little bit, and oh, no, got to throw that away. Prescription pills, right? It's not the same way in the sense that there isn't an odor, but they have an expiration date. And now what could happen is that those pills have been in your cabinet for how many years? Someone comes in, a friend, maybe it's not your child, maybe it's your child's friend, a family member, someone, comes in, grabs it, and maybe those pills had a time release capsule on it. Now there's no guarantees that that will work. A drug that was meant to hit them over a 4-hour period of time could hit them all at once, right? And that's where accidental overdoses come in. Talk early and talk often. We got to get rid of the checklist mentality. I don't think my dad had a physical checklist, but I think he had a mental one, right? The drug talk, the sex talk, the curfew talk, the driving talk. Those talks he had once, and then it was over. His job was done. I don't care how good of a public speaker you are or how many PowerPoints you have on your slide when you tell your sixth grader or seventh grader about drugs and alcohol. If that's only that one time, and now they're in 9th grade, 10th grade, and that cute boy from the football team comes up to them, or that girl asks them to come to a party, chances are they're not going to remember that one conversation you had 3 years ago, right? We got to have a constant conversation. It can't just be a talk, it needs to be a conversation. And using current events, using things that happen in the sports world or in the media or in the news, someone's overdosed or someone gets in trouble at school, using those as touch points with your child to talk and reinforce what your family's views are on this issue. Getting to know your child, and I know that sounds ridiculous. Who knows my child better than me? I'm their parent, right? But we know sometimes we get into this routine, right? Your kid comes home, you ask them how their day was, they give you the same answer. How many have kind of found themselves in that sometimes? Thank you for being honest. If you find yourself in that routine, getting the same answer every time, change the question. Ask them something specific. Ask them something specific about their day. Push a little bit harder. The one thing we have to remember is when we're dealing with kids, we're dealing with underdeveloped brains, right? How many of you have ever been in the situation where you're just like, don't you get it? Come on now, let's be, yeah, right? Like, don't you get it? If you smoke cigarettes one more time, you're going to get kicked off the football team. The school has a policy, don't you get it? They don't. They don't. Their brain doesn't have the ability. For guys, we're slow. 28 years old, 26 to 28 years old, our brain fully develops. For girls, they're a little faster, 21 to 23. The last part to fully develop is the frontal lobe, which controls the ability to make decisions. The last part. This is why regulations on not using tobacco till a certain age, not drinking till 21. If someone goes to 21 without drinking alcohol, it greatly increases their chances of not becoming an addict. You want your brain to be fully developed. And so we've got to think, we can't just yell at them and say, no, don't you get it? We got to help them see that. Because our brains are fully developed, so we think that way, but we don't see that theirs aren't. Partnering with other parents, monitoring and guiding, and then being their parent, right? They have tons of friends. Just look at their Facebook page or their Twitter or Instagram or whatever. They don't need another friend. They need someone to guide them. They need someone with a fully developed brain to help them go through their life. One big thing is when you're in high school, you feel like that is your entire life. They think their friends in high school are going to be their friends forever. And what happens in high school will affect their entire life. And it's one of those things that we, as parents and as community members, we want to help them see how one thing can lead to the next, and also that their choices that they make matter, and that they matter as well. So at this time, I'm going to pass it back over to Patty, and she'll go through some logistics of the Q&A time. I just want to remind you about your surveys and filling those out. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Adam. This handsome young man right here is Corey, and Mike, you've been watching him all night running the clock. These guys are going to be moving around the room and making sure that everyone that has a question has a chance to answer that question. We're going to do it kind of where we go from side to side. I'm going to try to keep it balanced if there are questions from both sides. But if not, then we'll just keep going from wherever questions exist. I do want all the speakers from tonight, if you could please come and join us up here on the stage and take a seat. And I want to just reiterate that this is a time for question and answer, and we want to make sure that these people who have given of their time to be with us tonight have the chance to answer the questions of the audience members. So if you have a comment or a story that you'd like to tell, we'd be happy to hear that afterwards, but we really want to keep this time for questions. So as everybody is sitting down, if you do have a question, if you raise your hand, these guys can kind of make their way around the room. Does anybody have a question that they'd like answered? I'm going to direct it towards probably one person for each question, so that we do move through these questions relatively quickly. I like to let the silence go for as long as I possibly can, but I think I have reached even my limit. So I think I do see a question. That's great. That's great. I was going to ask one.
You know, one thing that I think about, I've heard people share their stories over time, but one thing I think about, especially here when it's mostly parents, I would love to hear, and you mentioned a little bit the last speaker, but you know, what are the things your parents did along the way, and to either help or hinder that process? But as a parent, and I'm hearing you speak, and I really appreciate hearing that, but I also think, okay, now, where do I go with that? And even Karen, you know, as parents, I can imagine how hard it is to reach out. How can we, you know, get that information now before we're at that point in the middle of it and trying to deal with it? So hopefully that makes sense.
Taylor or Mike, you want to take that one first, and then they'll have Karen.
Sure. Is it okay? It's on. Yeah, my advice would be, so you know your kids, you know, at least you would like to think that you do. So my mom knew me, and she kind of had this feeling, right? But she never wanted to bring it up because of my father. She was, like I said, she was kind of in denial. I think there's ways where if you can sit down and talk and be that friend, that ear, it makes it easier. You know, like me and my mother, we have a great relationship to this day because she never gave up on me. She always supported me. But, you know, like I said, there was also, it goes both ways because you're so manipulative when you're an addict that I knew what I could get away with. But I think, like I said, she could have done a much better job sitting down with me, you know, and just kind of calling me out. And digging in and trying to get some answers instead of listening to any of the stuff that I fed her. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
And then,
I'm sorry. Can I say something too? Kind of to go on that as well. My mom became an enabler. She was afraid that, like, by calling the police on me, that I was going to be in more trouble. There were many, many times when I was intoxicated at home and needed to, you know, like, have something like that was going to stop me or whatever. And so as hard as it would have been for herself to call the police on me, and for as angry as I would have gotten with her, if that even makes any sense, as mad as I would have been about her calling the police on me, I think that it would have prevented me from getting into other trouble. And so not becoming an enabler and not being a pushover, standing firm in what you believe in, and getting them to treatment or whatever.
Karen, what were 2 or 3 warning signs that you saw?
I'm sorry?
What were 2 or 3 warning signs that you saw in Alyssa?
It was the behavior, the destructive, you know, her addiction was a deflection off of not wanting to look at herself, what was the issue internal, and wanting to deflect it, so it was all my fault. And so I appreciate, you know, what you're saying in regards with your parents. It absolutely breaks my heart because I too lived behind my walls. But one day I had enough and I did call the police on my daughter. My house was raided. You know, as a parent, you know, our kids don't come with owner's manuals. You know, we can continually blame us as a parent and almost like that we have some form of moral compass imbalance. I did the best I could with what I knew. I didn't know. Yes, her father was an alcoholic and a drug addict, but I had divorced him when Alyssa was 4. Did I see a lot of that addiction? Yes, the alcohol with him, I did. I didn't know that genetic makeup was gonna, or that marker, just like I may walk with the cancer marker, heart disease or what. I didn't know it was so prevalent. I didn't know about drugs. I didn't know about heroin. I was naive, and Alyssa would yell at me, all I want is your support. And I took it of, you've pawned everything out of my home, my jewelry, you've stolen everything, you've crashed cars. I've gotten calls at 2 in the morning to come pick you up, and you're in the bowels of Minnesota or in Hudson or what? What more? You know, and then you have a parent that, what do? Do you kick your child out like you were homeless and you get that inevitable call? Or you keep them close when you're home so you can at least try and protect them? There's no right answer. And that's what's so, that hopeless and helpless feeling. Because if we knew the answer and we could fix this, but we do know that it's preventable, it's treatable, but we need to educate ourselves.
That was a tremendously honest answer. Thank you. Do we have another question out there? Yes, back there.
I have a question to the DA and the police chief, and maybe even the speaker from Know the Truth. But is there a responsibility for the media? I read a lot of articles about people getting DWIs, the recent bomb threat in Roberts with the pipe bomb, a guy killed a cat, and there's all these articles in papers, and there's on the next page advertisements for goings-on at bars and such like that, but there's nothing suggesting where to go for resources if you do have a problem, rehabilitation. I was just wondering if you guys do put any responsibility on the media for that.
Mr. Johnson, you want to take that one?
Well, obviously, the media has a lot to do with it. Advertising, obviously, that plays a big impact, and especially when you see the advertisements on TV and in the newspapers and so forth. But that's the society we live in. We live in, you have the constitutional right to free speech. As long as that free speech isn't, you know, I don't want to say dangerous, but like advertising, unless you're not doing something illegal, they're allowed to do it. I do believe there is a lot of influences. An example comes up is the Joe Camel, You can't tell me that wasn't targeted to kids from the tobacco companies. So it's definitely got something to do with it. And I think a lot of this stuff coming out of Colorado, they showed the suckers up there before. You can't tell me that's targeted for adults. That's targeted for kids. Mm-hmm. And we've already had those suckers in the school district here already this year. So I think that type of advertisement does have an effect on what we see.
Yeah, let's just talk about Wisconsin a little bit. Wisconsin has the lowest beer tax in the country, or alcohol tax. It hasn't been raised for over 40 years. It's pennies. We're the only state in the country for first offense OWI is still a civil forfeiture, so you don't even have to appear in court. You can plead by plead guilty by letter. So the culture in our state, in Wisconsin, is really favors alcohol abuse and the abuse of alcohol and the solutions that we came up with, or that as prosecutors we came up with, let's increase the beer tax and let's use that money to fund some of the anti-alcohol programs and make first offense a criminal, or first offense OWI criminal. So it's not really the media. I think it's lack of, and because it's probably politics, and we've got a strong tavern league in Wisconsin, but there's no, the way Wisconsin looks at alcohol, I think, is back in the 50s, and there's not a recognition of what the problem is, and there's no resources, and it's discouraging that over the years nobody's had the political will to say we've got to do something about this. So that's just one specific example. It's not really, it doesn't answer your question directly, but I think that's one of the big problems we have here.
I know there was another question in the back there.
I guess for Chief Jensen and Mr. Johnson and Adam, sadly, there's a lot of parents who can't or won't do their jobs in this area, and it's got to move to the next level of adults. I'm wondering what's happening that's new in the Hudson area in the last few years for teachers, scout leaders, priests, reverends, other people who are pretty influential with students. Do you reach out to those people and get workshops for them and kind of update them on all of this stuff?
Good. No, go ahead. I'm not quite sure.
My hearing was, it's basically, I couldn't quite hear some of that. It's basically what do we do for people that are substituting for parents? Well, we don't. I don't. I mean, I know Human Services gets involved, but if people fall through, when they get to our office, they're at the end. I mean, when they get to our office where we're looking at a file for criminal prosecution and there's victims involved, and let's say there's some violence involved, the fact that they're on their second parents that are taking care of them and that type of thing aren't really issues, because we're looking at victims and keeping people safe. So that, just to be honest with you, I think that's a question that Human Services would handle. But just when it gets to our office and when Chief Jensen's people are investigating it and there's crimes involved and you have victims and that type of thing, it's in a lot of cases, I don't want to say too late, but it's at the end of the process. That's not a good answer, but.
Well, maybe Adam could tell me. Has he reached out to the teachers here as much as the students?
Yeah, I think, so our program Know the Truth, we work with over 160 high schools and middle schools, and not to brag on Kelly a little bit, but you have a position here at the school, a resource for the students that not a lot of schools have. Unfortunately, the health department and those types of programs for schools are the first to get cut for budgets. And so a lot of times, like, counselors have a load of 300 kids, 500 kids, whatever it might be, and now they're just really working on schedules. They're not actually able to give counseling service to the kids. But Kelly's position here, working with the students, gives that ability. They have groups here for kids that are in recovery. They've had meetings for them. And then as a program, we reach out to schools, community organizations, and provide training on warning signs, what to look for, things like this. So we work with coaches. We work with, we've done presentations for foster parents and those types of, so there's not a lot out there for those individuals, but we're working to try to do that and work with communities to provide those resources. But again, I will say here at the Hudson High School, you've got a great resource in Kelly and her position, and the first, Tracy and Kelly, the program they talked about, Hudson Safe, I think is a resource for parents as well. So there is a huge need. A lot of times people fall through the gaps, and we're trying to kind of close those as much we can.
Recently, also, I can tell you that Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge, and the word Minnesota at the beginning of that does not mean that we don't actually come over here to the churches over here in the Wisconsin area as well. We have begun offering trainings. Actually, a lot of it is through the Know the Truth program as well, for clergy members and for people who would like to train themselves on how to look for signs. So I think that's another factor that actually Adam leads more than one team. He wears lots of hats. But one of the other things that his team is doing is working with the churches as well. Did we have another question? Yes, down here, Corey.
It's kind of hard to hear on my... Yeah, I didn't hear it.
Okay, I think my question is for the district attorney and Adam. So as a resident of Wisconsin here, we're close to the border, obviously. So say we have an individual that comes to the court system, but doesn't have insurance. Like, how do we, on the Wisconsin side, get Teen Challenge services?
Well, actually, there is a Teen Challenge here in Wisconsin. There's actually one in every state in the union, including Alaska, just this year. But you are much closer to Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge than you are to the program in Milwaukee. So that could be a factor for you guys. There's actually several different ways. That would really depend on the person. So we would want to talk to that person individually. You saw that Mike is a resident of Wisconsin and came into our program. There's another gentleman that I'm thinking of that came in not too long ago from the state of Iowa. There are things that are available to those people, but if there was somebody in particular, we would really need to look at that on a case-by-case basis.
I'd like to touch on that too. And when we had our big meth problem a few years ago, we found that one of the things that worked was Teen Challenge, and there was a variety of other things, but Teen Challenge worked, and there were ways to get people in. I mean, with people, I mean, insurance was the easy one, but if you didn't have insurance, there was payment plans and things like that. And I know I was working with defense attorneys trying to get people in. So even though somebody doesn't have insurance, I think there are ways to make it work.
And insurance is only really a factor for the short-term programming. Our long-term program does not accept insurance on either side of the river. So it's a 12-month program, and so for the short-term program, insurance probably would still be accepted out of network across the river. But for our long program, it would not be accepted on either side of the for anyone. So there's just other options and things that we would have to figure out. We do try to be the most inexpensive program that we possibly can for any individual, and so the most that someone would pay actually ends up being far less than a one-bedroom apartment for every month. So just wanted to let you guys know that we do have lots of options for people, and we do try to be as flexible as possible.
And would you really try to send someone, say, from Hudson, St. Croix, Pierce County, to Milwaukee versus to Minnesota?
That would really be their choice. And I wouldn't necessarily send them. It would be a matter of what they felt the most comfortable with and looking at their options. Because really we do try to put the treatment plan back in the hands of the person that's getting the help. The more power that we can give back to that person in the decision-making process, actually the more successful they will be in the long run.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry for jumping in on that. It's just, I know that Adam and I work together quite a bit, so. On this side, do we have another question? Oh, yes.
Question. Okay, so if you know somebody who is on probation and he is still using, how do you, go about to ask, his parole officer to try to help him or go, do you know what I'm trying to?
I would like you to violate this person.
Well, if you know somebody that's on probation and you believe that they're using again and it's against their probation violation, you can contact their probation agent. You can remain anonymous, or you can call us and remain anonymous. Just let us know who the person is. We'll contact their probation agent. they will bring them in and have them do a drug screen on them. And they don't have to have any reason for it either. If they're on probation, they can be brought in at any time for a drug screen, and they'll do it.
That's a super brave question, by the way. Thank you. Way to go. I think many of us have been in that situation. Good for you.
Okay. Okay, so regarding her situation though, so obviously if you're calling in on someone to their probation officer, we're trying to get them help. We don't want them just to end up back in jail for another year, prison, whatever they're facing. They need help. They need Teen Challenge. They need something like that. Is there a barrier, or who, as a family member, a loved one, a friend, who do we go to have the judge say, you know, have us be heard by them to say, we want help versus jail? Or, you know what I mean? I guess.
Yeah, us, DA's office, we have a victim witness office, but if the people that were involved with the person, let's say they are in probation and they're gonna get revoked, but the people that turned them in and the family and the people that were involved say, we don't want this person to go to prison, we want treatment, we want help, that's why we did it. I mean, we're not insensitive idiots. I mean, we'll listen to that. And that'll be a strong factor in our recommendation, and usually the judge, we have good judges on things like that in the county, and they'll follow that. So,
What drug court?
yeah, we have a drug court too. You know, if
What
somebody's
is drug court? You mentioned that.
Well, if you're involved in drugs and you're a high-risk offender, it's not, you know, it's not occasional marijuana smokers, it's high-risk people that are involved in a lot of issues and have addictions. You can apply to drug court, and if you're accepted, you meet once a week with this drug court team, and you follow all these rules. And if you don't follow the rules, you get sentenced and you could go to prison. So it's a weekly thing. That's, in a paragraph, that's what drug court is.
I know a lot of youth that are in the drug court program, and you know, it's grown by leaps and bounds. It has saved a tremendous amount of the youth in our community's lives. It's very structured. It's that, you know, no pass, no fail, you know. I mean, there's sanctions, there's consequences, but I have seen so much success as a parent, as an advocate out in our community, and I didn't mean to jump in there, but I've seen a lot of growth within our St. Croix County Drug Court, and it's saving lives.
Is it a new thing?
I'm sorry?
Is drug court
7
a new
years.
thing?
We've
Okay.
had 7 years.
Okay, I'll stop.
I want to invite you guys, if you have more questions afterwards, to please come and talk to us. I know that Mike being from out of state and knowing several other clients who are from out of state, we could certainly talk with you guys. And then I can give you my card personally at the end of the night as well if you'd like to just have a more specific conversation going forward. I know I see Kelly over here has the mic in her hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a minute and kind of, Mr. Lewis had a question just a couple of minutes ago about resources that we would offer for people who are kind of secondary parents in the community. And Adam did a good job of touching on some of the things that we offer, but I have parents who call me of sometimes elementary school age students or middle school students who say, you know, I know my kid's not in high school, but I have questions, or I'm looking for resources for this or for whatever. And I would never turn a parent down, and it doesn't have to be a parent. It could be a priest, it can be a foster parent, it can be a person from a medical agency or social workers. I work very closely with a lot of the county social workers. And, you know, we do what we can to pass information along. One of the big things that that's kind of on the horizon that I'm really excited about, I don't have permission to give out too much information, but we do have a countywide substance abuse prevention coalition who's kind of been a little bit low key this year because of some changes within the county kind of employee chain, but it's kind of getting back up and going, and I'm super, super excited about the prevention initiatives that are going to be taking place over the spring and summer months here that are going to be rolling out. And I hope I can share, Patty, that one of those things include staff development so countywide, any secondary public educator, 6th through 12th grade, hopefully will be involved in some staff development at the beginning of the year that also will include resource guides, local resource guides for kids, so that we no longer can have parents or other people in the community that come in and say, I didn't know where to go, I didn't know who to turn to. So that's a huge initiative that I'm super excited to be a part of. And and I, being new in the community and being new in my position, I'm doing as much as I can to just get my name and my face out there to say, I might not have the answer immediately, but I'm happy to dig up what I can and get people information that they're looking for. So if there are people who are looking for information, or someone who wants to be involved in the initiatives that are in the community, just ask around. There's lots of things that we need people for, volunteers, support. So it feels like people who want to be involved can do that, and we definitely need that. So thank you for those who already are.
Thank you, Kelly. Do you have any questions? Oh, yeah, I see 2 hands on this side. If I can
Is it okay if I go?
Oh, 3 hands. Oh, yes, absolutely. I'm sorry.
Okay. This question is kind of directed towards the presenters today. I'm a nurse at Regions Hospital in the mental health facility, and I have a lot of patients that come in who've been to multiple chemical dependency treatment centers, and they just haven't found success. So I guess this question is, what encouraging words would you give to my patients? And this could relate to the community too, if people know family members or friends that have been through multiple treatments and they just haven't found success. What would you say to them?
Good question.
The word that comes to mind for me was just perseverance. That day that I got pulled out of treatment and sent to prison was a gigantic shock for me. And so just by encouraging them that they can do it, and that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and no matter what hardship they're going through, that they will make it if they hang on and if they fight with everything that they have, because it's so worth it in the end.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's no magic words, but just kind of my story. I've been through several treatments. My father's been through several. I'd say 90% of the people that I've either known inside those treatments, inside meetings, AA meetings, I've been involved for a very long time. I've had some sobriety, have been to multiple treatments. It's very rare when you talk to somebody that got sober their first time and stayed sober. So, I think, like Taylor said, just encouraging them and just kind of letting them know that that's what addicts do. And it doesn't mean that, they're never going to change or anything. For a lot of people, including myself, pain was a motivator. Going through enough finally motivated me to say enough was enough. And it's worked so far. So, generally, the more broken they are, the better their odds are. So that would be my advice.
And broken in this case, I think he means emotionally, broken and ready to open up. It's one of those words that we use a lot that sometimes can have more than one meaning. We actually have time. I got the signal that we have time for one more question, so I'm going to take one more question from this side. Whoever was next, Mike, you have the person who's next. And then I want to let everyone know that they can come up and ask more questions, or make sure that they go out to the resource tables and ask the other questions that they have.
Okay, so my question is, how often is Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenger in the counties in Wisconsin in the jail system? Because I know that you guys are in for repeat offenders over in Minnesota, but is there anything like that happening in this area?
Not to the same extent. I can answer that that's actually not happening to the same extent. We do visit churches. We have a choir that consists of the people who are in our long-term programs, that 400-person group that splits up into different groups and goes into churches. And we do actually do some work with communities, specifically for our short-term program, because we want to make sure that people who have insurance and do have access to coming over across the river without any kind of special circumstances do know that they have that access. So it's something that we are trying to make sure that we do. But it's something that we also don't want to advertise something that we can't deliver. So that's something that we want to be very careful about. And I thank you for your question. But I do, if you do love somebody who needs help, If you care about somebody who needs help, we are here to answer questions the best that we can. And in a group of any size where there's more than one person in the room, there's probably somebody who knows someone who needs assistance. So please don't hesitate to say something. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. I want to remind you yet again that these surveys do help us do our jobs better, and we would love to hear from you. So please, if you filled that out, please hand it to one of the people with a name tag on the way out the door. If you haven't filled that out, we ask that you would spend some time doing so. Also want to thank all of our speakers, especially Karen. Just tremendous bravery, and I really appreciate it. Yes, Mr.
One
Johnson.
thing, I just want to publicly thank Teen Challenge for coming in here.
Thank you.
This community needs you to do this, and I hope you keep doing it. Thank you.
It's a privilege to be here.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
helping us here.
One last thing, CEUs are available if you go to the Know the Truth table. Sorry, I forgot to say that at the beginning. If you did come seeking CEUs for the Board of Social Work or Board of Nursing, see the Know the Truth table.
Thank you so much, and I know that I will be down here. I think Adam also will be down front, and then also there will be representatives out in the lobby. I know I packed my purse full of cards, so we should be ready to go with if we can't answer it, we can hopefully answer it tomorrow via email.